Welcome, creative community, to your passport behind the studio door. I'm Amy Funderburk, and today on our creative journey, we're chatting with a fellow traveler on the artistic path, Lina Kogan. We'll be discussing using yellow Legos as brushstrokes, control, and the quote, "Art is either plagiarism or a revolution." Lina is an award-winning American contemporary sculptor and mixed media artist. She was born in Ukraine and moved to the United States in 1992. She currently resides in Los Angeles and balances her art practice with a career in technology as she builds minimalistic 2D and 3D art with found objects from the high-tech world. Welcome, Lina. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me.
So, Lina, what aspects of your story most affect or inspire your artwork?
Hey, where do I start? So, probably the software engineering and technology part. It definitely has an influence on my work. I don't create digital or AI work. It's definitely hands-on, tactile, sculptural. Even if it's a 2D piece, it's going to have texture. But I do use objects from modern day world. I deconstruct computers, any gadgets, anything I can find around us. That always often finds way into an artwork. There may be elements from the current life as well as something from the past. For example, I always use this orange thread that my grandmother brought from Kiev 33 years ago. And it may end up being next to a computer key or a Lego piece that, that my kids played with. So it's definitely, the work is about connections between generations, connections between points of my brain sometimes, or, different thoughts that I have, or objects and facts, connections between people, communication, right? Technology often helps us communicate, but also it breaks down our communication sometimes and helps us lose focus instead of helping us achieve things, right? So that happens to me sometimes. And I think that's reflected in my work in a positive way, right? Because all of that can be turned into something beautiful. There is beauty in everything we see every day.
I agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to add that probably the integration, right? And when I'm thinking about my software career, I often define myself as an integrator. We always integrate different aspects of technology together, and that definitely reflects itself in my artwork as well. There's always putting things together and creating a composition.
I really like with your description of including your grandmother's orange thread with the modern technological mixed media elements. Like, I love that timeline flow, but also knowing your work, you love that pop of orange. And so I didn't realize that your grandmother's thread was orange. And so I love that connection point as well in your work.
Yeah, it's like the red thread, they say sometimes, but in my case, I guess it's the orange thread. Yeah,
that's right. Of course it's orange. It should be orange.
Yeah.
I think it's super interesting what you're saying about combining modern technological elements with like your grandmother's thread. I love that timeline layering, that timeline connection.
Definitely. Yeah. And in fact, I do have a series that's called exactly that. It's about time. It's called Which Watch? It's About Time. I have a whole series where I deconstructed different watches that belong to me and actually my grandmother and some other family members. And definitely, you're right. The work is always about connections between generations, between different thoughts in my brain, between different objects, between people, and just different aspects of our life.
One thing that I know is really important to me in my artwork is travel. I know you've been to Alaska recently, you've been to Ireland and to Japan. So, how does travel affect and influence your work?
Definitely, travel and art are two of my passions. So first of all, in most of my travels, I try to visit a modern or contemporary art museum. and I definitely draw inspiration from what I see there. It's always a treat to discover a new artist or movement or learn about the known ones, which actually drew me to the museum in the first place. So I do take a lot of photographs. I love nature as well. I love spending time in nature, and I often take pictures of everything I see, and it becomes my abstract inspirations. I often look for just abstract shapes. I'm always looking for something that would create a good composition, even if it doesn't make into a painting as is. It definitely inspires me, and I have a whole collection of photos. I do post a lot of them on social media, just so that I have a record of where I was for myself. Then, when I'm creating artwork in my studio later, I often refer to those photos just to kind of get started, right? None of the artwork that I have created is an exact replica of the photo, or you may not even recognize that this photo influenced this artwork, but it's usually the combination, kind of a set of impressions. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of influence, even if it's just color, shape, or feeling, or concept. Those impressions really find themselves in my work.
I know that one of the photos that you shared with me, you ended up doing a diptych based on the puffins in Alaska. Do you want to talk about that process for anyone who's listening who isn't an abstract artist, of like, since you're not a landscape painter, for example, like what kind of process you might have been going through as you developed those works from the travel photos?
When I went to Alaska, one of the highlights was walking around the glaciers, of course, and also taking some passage around the glaciers, and we learned about these amazing birds, puffins. These baby puffins, they fly from one place to another, and they're when they feed on fish or whatever they feed on, on the way back, sometimes they can't fly and they need to take some time to digest, and then they fly better. So I thought it was amazing to learn about them, and I was fascinated by the way they look. They have these orange beaks. So I did create artwork later on, which kind of subconsciously, I wasn't thinking that, oh, I'm going to create this artwork thinking of puffins, but just because I had all these images in my brain from recent travels, that's what kind of came out. And I definitely used the color scheme from Alaska. It was basically blue and white and gray, and some orange representing the beak of the puffin. And I realized that only when the painting was done, when the collage actually is more of an assemblage piece, when it was done, I was like, okay, what is the title of that? It's definitely inspired by all these Alaskan impressions. And I realized that it's called The Puffin Flight. Sometimes I do come up with titles like that at the very end of the painting, once I finally realize what it resembles, or what it implies to me.
And sometimes I think that all of this different input just kind of cooks in our brain, in the creative part of our brain, and then it just comes out as we're working on a piece of art. And then it's maybe sometimes not until much later that we figure out, oh, yeah, that needed orange because of that puffin or whatever. That's what I have found anyway.
Subconsciously, for sure.
Exactly, like a subconscious creative soup. Exactly. So they say that we stand on the shoulders of giants. So who are some of your initial artistic influences, and how do you either augment or stray from that foundation today in your current practice?
Yeah, definitely. So one of my influences, I would definitely say Alexander Calder. I was always fascinated since early age by his sculptures, the mobiles, the use of negative space, the use of wires, and sculptures that move with the environment. And of course, there is this engineering aspect. How does he make it? They're giant, and they move, and the geometric shapes, and I feel that all of that somehow manifests itself in my work. But in fact, in my latest practice, the sculptures that move with the environment too, in a way, I created the sculptures which are moved by the viewers, they move these cubes around, and the piece becomes kind of a crowdsourcing. It changes shape. So I just realized recently that maybe that's my subconscious channeling of Calder in a way. I am also influenced by Dada movement. I was always drawn to that. Definitely the rebellion. There's this quote that's attributed to Marcel Duchamp: "Art is either plagiarism or revolution." It kind of resonates with me. It definitely influences what I do. So yeah, those are the giants.
I particularly like Calder's Circus. Have you seen Calder's Circus?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that
It's
is amazing.
adorable.
It's adorable, and then
It's
what
adorable.
he does with wires. Yeah.
I know, right? So you mentioned Calder being an influence, and with the wires and everything, like that's reminding me of your Out of Control Tower piece. Do you want to talk
Oh
about
yeah.
that piece for everyone?
Definitely. Yeah. So that's the project that actually that had several iterations. So the iteration number one is right behind me, that Raku sculpture that you see with wires kind of sticking out there. That was created 25 years ago. And the whole the concept was, well, I don't know if you can see from there, but it's got some computer motherboards on top of the Raku
Oh, okay.
and play, and there are definitely wires that are sticking out, and there's a plug that doesn't work and doesn't do anything, because when I was creating ceramics, I often called it my dysfunctional ceramic series. Definitely it was more sculptural than functional. Yeah, so that was a long time ago. And then a few years ago, I kind of came back to that concept. I really like the idea of the wires being kind of these crazy wires on top. So I created this piece with actually several towers and standing on these long legs. And they're definitely wires. And to the wires, wooden cubes are attached. Actually, cubes like this. I actually have one that's not attached to anything. And the cube has a little magnet. And because the towers also have a lot of found objects and some metallic pieces, the magnets can attach to the towers. And so this was kind of the crowdsourcing piece that I was talking about earlier. It was actually premiered at the Nomad show a few years ago, Nomad show organized by Torrance Art Museum. And I had a blast. I saw a lot of people coming to the tower, rearranging the cubes, and the whole point was that it never looked the same, and the cubes kind of moved around, and people had fun with it, and it definitely got out of control. And wires got tangled. Yeah, so that was the second iteration of the tower. And then most recently, I thought, I wanted to create something larger, and this current tower kind of came about with two different towers, but each panel is an abstract painting, also with elements of metal that will take the cubes that will attach to them. So that piece was actually at Burning Man last year, and
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was actually pretty cool also to see the interaction there, and various interesting individuals coming up to play with it, and definitely rearrange it and tangle it. And yeah, so definitely there is a lot of experimentation around that, and I have a lot more plans for the tower. And most recently, I've added some lights. So with the rearranging of the cubes, sometimes they're lights, small, tiny lights. They're subtle, but they may or may not come on because, hey, it's out of control tower. We never know what's going to happen, right?
And it's Burning Man, and that,
Well, yeah, Burning Man too, right? But
Yeah.
even if it's not at Burning Man, it was actually at the Nomad this year, just a few weeks ago, and I had a blast with it there too. It was really fun to watch the interaction, and I'm learning a lot by seeing people interacting. Actually, a lot of people
Right.
are asking questions like, what does it mean? Like, what are you trying to say? Like, what is your relationship with control? And I always say that for me, sometimes it's very, I'm always thinking that I can control something which really is outside of my control. right? I'm kind of I'm thinking, hey, can I control this person's behavior? Maybe I could affect that. Well, not really. I mean, there's a lot of outcomes that are outside of our control, and it's just interesting to see how people react to a project like that.
It sounds like experimentation is a really important aspect to the creative process for you.
Oh yeah,
How much does intuition also play in your work, in your process?
definitely. Yeah, there's intuition at every step. When I create my two-dimensional works, uh, I I kind of start out. I want to say that I start out intellectually, right? I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna embed some of the objects. Like I'm already, I may be thinking of one or two objects that I have in mind that I might embed, and I'm starting with my ground layer usually, and it starts out intellectually, but then as I start applying colors and collage elements to the next layer, it kind of, when the painting starts to take shape, again, I may have some color schemes in mind, maybe inspired by some photos that I took, or just something that is kind of in the back of my mind, right? I may be thinking, okay, let's just start with one or two colors, but then things just kind of start flowing, and definitely intuition plays a huge role. And I'm always looking for an element to include as a brushstroke. I kind of look around my messy studio and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like look at this Lego piece. It's just the right color of yellow, just the right shade, and it will play well with this, off-white piece over here. And then it's going to match this acrylic paint that I'm going to apply next to it. So it's just, everything can be a brushstroke. And yeah, it's also deciding when the painting is finished. Definitely that's an intuitive process. And that may take days and hours, and it may stay in the studio for a while, and then I'll come back to it later and I'll be like, oh my gosh, it needs another layer, or maybe like, oh no, we just needed this one element and now it's finished. So definitely intuitive process, but I can't say that it's completely intuitive. I mean, there are two sides to the process, right? Yeah, sure. I'm probably half and half, intellectual and intuitive.
My painting mentor, incidentally, in college said that an artist never really finishes a piece; he or she just stops working on it. So
that's an interesting observation.
Some food for thought there. So what's the next step for your work, and where might viewers be able to find you and find your work?
I am going to continue working on this out of control tower. I'm going to make probably more panels for sure. And I mentioned that I introduced lights this time. So the next step is definitely going to be music. I plan to collaborate with a musical artist and with basically add the element of interaction that will enable some musical sounds, and definitely it's still going to be very random because it's out of control tower. So stay tuned. It may turn into something very interesting. Definitely experimentation is going to be a part of it. And then in addition to the tower, I definitely plan to create more 2D artwork, which will have elements of interactivity there too. There would be parts that could be moved around, and that will be the challenge, to make sure that they work either way and kind of compositionally, but there will be more magnets, and so there will be some engineering that will have to happen to make sure that the work actually stays together. But yeah, definitely those are the plans. To see my artwork, go to my website, linakogan.com. You can find me on Instagram at Lina Kogan Art, or Facebook, Lina Kogan Art.
Great. I love that idea of that cross-pollination and the interdisciplinary aspect of you working with a musician and a lighting technician and everything. That sounds like a really cool direction for that piece. And I think it's so interesting how that one work just keeps having this evolution.
There you go. Evolution versus revolution.
like we do as artists, Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Amy.
If you enjoyed today's art conversation, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. Go ahead and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss the next one. And please like this video because these are all great ways for you to support my channel and help it to grow so that I can continue to bring you more creative content just like this. If you're an existing subscriber, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I'm delighted to have you on board. I'll see everyone next time.